According to an article in the USA Today, there was a study by the Economic Policy Institute, which is, of course, a left-leaning policy think tank, that reports that CEOs in the United States made 303 times as much as the average worker in 2014, making, of course, economic inequality the central issue. The report says it found that CEO compensation for the largest firms was about $16.3 million in 2014, an increase of 3.9% from last year and 54.3% since the end of the financial crisis. Yes, 54% since the end of the financial crisis. The recovery, the so-called recovery, who's recovered? These guys.
Yep. This is no duh news, but when you see the numbers, it just blows your mind. You know what? And I know this is going back a little bit, but there's the connection here. Remember when everything was going down with McDonald's and raising the minimum wage and stuff like that? And of course, the fight's still going on.
Sure.
But I remember that there were stories circulating through the blogosphere of like, oh, they're going to replace it with machines now that take your order. And some people were posting this stuff as if it was a victory. Like as if it's like, you workers want more for making our French fries? Well, look at what happened to you. And I was dumbfounded by the fact, and I think it's because a theme that we've talked about a lot on this show, that whole like bootstraps mentality.
Right.
You're not, you can be part of the 1%. It's not like the cards are stacked against you. This quote American dream that you have to be asleep to believe in, as George Carlin said it best. And I think that there's people out there, and when you look at these numbers, it's like, how can you be against the workers and supporting these CEOs that are engaging in predatory capitalism, that are doing these things? This is not, the free market that some of the early thinkers of America and stuff were writing about. This is not it, or anywhere close to it. This is a scam.
Well, I think one of the reasons that people like to support those CEOs is because they think that they'll be one day. They'll think that that American dream, they're going to be able to, with just enough work and enough elbow grease and some gumption, and by God dang it, I'm going to be a millionaire someday. It's that old saying, and I can't remember who to credit it to, but poor people they're not poor. They're just temporarily embarrassed millionaires. And it goes back to that, belief in the American dream, which we used to have, which we don't have anymore. Economic mobility in America is at one of the lowest points. It's much, much lower here in America than it is in Europe and in other places. You can't get ahead just by hard work anymore. It doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think that there are still certain, I mean, there is still that whole thing, like if you work hard, you have a chance to do better in what you do. I mean, like the Young Turks, for instance. I mean, Cenk Uygur worked incredibly hard, and look at where he is now. And in a lot of, artists, musicians, stuff like that, the harder you work, you're going to see something for it. And that's kind of a principle that's really strong in this country, in this experiment, and that's a fine thing. The difference is that, that idea of capitalism is all fine and good, but it needs to kind of be boggled down. There can't be this unlimited wiggle room. That's what we have now, and that's why you see this gross imbalance with CEO pay and the way that workers are marginalized and then somehow successfully vilified. And why are they successfully vilified? Well, you have a media that also thinks they're part of this corporate elite, and many are.
I'm not, just for clarity, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that it's much harder to do now than it used to be.
Sure.
And I think a lot of it, part of it has to do with, of course, some people that like burning the bridges. Right? And you do get people who burn bridges, and and of course lots of competition, and of course barriers put in place. Now, one thing that I would like to point out that maybe some progressives will get mad at me, maybe some of them will agree with me, but there is regulation out there. Generally, overall, I think regulation is a good thing in certain sectors, especially. But I think with the way that our system is set up now in government, you have a lot of corporate power, corporate lobbying, and these corporations with lots and lots of money, as you've seen, they got 54%. You know, these CEOs, their wages have increased by 54%. They can use a lot of that money to do corporate lobbying in order to put in place regulations that will make an unfair playing field in the markets, therefore guaranteeing that they keep their competition down. I think that's one of the reasons that we don't see a lot of small business owners. We see a lot of them struggle and not make it as big. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them. And I think there are certain regulatory practices put in place in order to kind of create a barrier to entry in the market, something that might be insurmountable, or even access to capital markets for smaller businesses, for entrepreneurs and people with ideas and stuff. I think we've seen a lot of that be a little bit more limited than it used to be as well. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, it's definitely not easy being an entrepreneur right now.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I mean, can you still get a piece of the pie to some degree? Yeah, sure. Yeah. But that has nothing to do with, you know, a lot of people, they use that as a reason to go vote against their own interests. Mm-hmm. You know, as if, like, you know, voting for the Democrats or whatever is going to stop you from opening that pizza shop. It isn't.
Right. Right, for sure. Anyway, I want to go a little bit back into the numbers as well, and some quotes from the study. Now, it says that not only are CEOs making more money than the average worker, is of course no duh, they're also making more money than other top wage earners. Now, this is interesting. CEO compensation in 2013 was almost 6 times higher than others in the top 0.1% of earners. So that's interesting. They're shooting above even other rich people. And Lawrence Michel, president of the EPI and co-author of the report, says the claim is that high CEO pay is a marker for talent. However, he disagrees with the notion that these CEOs are 303 times more talented than the average worker, or that they work 303 times harder. He said, quote, "This data would suggest that executives are not only 300 times more talented than the average worker, but also 6 times more talented and valuable than other people in the top 1,000 of earners." I don't agree with that. I mean, I think CEOs should get more compensation. Obviously, they are taking more risk, but 300 times more? Come on.
Right.
That's a little lopsided.
Yeah, I mean, it crosses it. And when you look at it, I mean, there's been a lot of stats compared to other countries. Mm-hmm. And nobody touches the United States.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody even touches the United States when it comes to worker v. CEO compensation. Mm-hmm. The United States is in a league all on its own, and it looks like a typo compared to other places, but it's not. That's actually what we have. And it's, you know, it's reached a point of crisis, and it's good that we're finally addressing this, but until there's some actual policy, nothing's going to change.
Right. And speaking of change, it used to be that CEO pay was a little bit more in line, you know, maybe a 25-to-1, which I'm fine with. You know, even that, I like that. Compared to 303-to-1,
right.
25-to-1 sounds awesome. Like, let's go back to that, especially now with how profitable American corporations are. That'd be great. But anyway, since 1978, according to the report, inflation-adjusted CEO pay has jumped, and this is going to blow your mind, 997%.
Yeah.
997. Let's compare that to the average worker. Average worker, you know, you would think, well, come on, like, average workers had to have gotten, you know, yes, they didn't get a lot of it, but, you know, there's some of it, right? They got about 10.9% over the same period.
Well, and I think it's also worth pointing out that the minimum wage has not kept up with inflation.
Absolutely not.
I mean, not even close.
You're correct. If it was kept up to inflation, and I see two different numbers, I see like a $21 and I see a $15. I'm not sure which one is the adjusted, the inflation-adjusted living wage, but you know, it would be a lot higher.
Yeah, no, it'd be a lot higher, and that's why, you know, it's reached a mode of crisis. The minimum wage needs to go up. I'm okay with it going up slowly, just because I don't want it to be a missed opportunity. But it needs to go up, and it needs to be addressed. And I think the goal should be that eventually we should be at 15 federally.
Mm-hmm. And also, you know, I think that's, I mean, if we're going to raise the minimum wage, I think it would be fair to have some exemptions. I know Seattle put in a $15 minimum wage in the SeaTac area, and they said no exemptions. Do it now, all businesses. And I guess I'm a little bit more, you know, I guess center, maybe even slightly conservative on this issue, and to say that you can carve out some temporary exemptions for smaller businesses, places that would actually struggle a bit harder to implement a living wage in the area and still be able to remain profitable, you know, and keep their workers.
Well, I feel like there's already a lot of built-in ways. I mean, like
Sure.
for instance, if you're starting up a business and it's kind of like ground floor, I mean, you can have contractors, you can have like contract type situations until you can get it to a point where you can have a certain payroll and the cash flow warrants it. I mean, there's all kinds of ways where if you really want to do something and you have somebody that is willing to help, that knows what they're getting into, you can make it happen in a way that is in accordance with the law. I think that that's already in place. So I think what those no exemptions really do is I think it prevents some corporate lawyers or something like that from trying to, bridge some loopholes. I think that's what that really does.
And look, speaking of Seattle, I think they've had a lot of success so far when it comes to local businesses in that area. So then again, it is Seattle, and so we'll have to continue monitoring like the data and stuff from Seattle to see how it works. But as far as I know, it seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of friends up there because I used to live there, and it has been so far so good, and yeah, gonna have to keep an eye on it, and hopefully other places follow suit.